Colorado-Wyoming chapter of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. And thank you for joining us. This is the third in our series of board educational events. You may recall some time ago, Sharon O'Hara gave us a nice educational overview of the various MS services that we offer. At one of our board meetings, Tim Kutze also gave us a good overview of research. And as you may recall, Tim is the head of all the research for the society. So this is our third meeting, and we will be talking about fundraising and how to be better fundraisers, and more generally, how to be better ambassadors and advocates for the society. I'm here in a room full of interesting people. Among others, we have the inimitable Kaylin Daniels. We have Bruce Barnum, who apparently is imitable. We have Kristen Gibbs. We have Sophia Conti. And rounding out the staff, we have Carrie Nolan. We also have our special speaker for the evening, Carol Miller, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Karen Nickel is with us as well as two other board members, Michael Pierce, Rick Levine, who will be speaking this evening. Just so you know, there are no slides in this presentation tonight, so you don't need to worry about following along in a webinar. Also, you are all unmuted, so anything you say can be used against you, right? No, I'm teasing on that one, but if your dog is barking in the background, we will hear your dog, okay? So basically, Karen Nickel in particular gathered a lot of information from board members about what things we need to be educated on. And fundraising was high on the list. And how can we be better fundraisers? What's appropriate for fundraising? What are some of the tips and tricks of the trade? How do we learn to do that? How do we practice that? How do we do that as individuals? And perhaps how do we do that as part of a group? Either with other board members or with board members and staff. So we've put together a program tonight, and I want to thank Karen Nickel, who I think was the driving force behind this. And we've recruited Carol Miller to come in and speak with us as well. And Carol, some of you may remember Carol worked at the Society from 2009 to 2012. She then moved on. She's now the Director of Leadership Gifts at Colorado Public Radio. So if you listen to NPR and CPR, Colorado Public Radio, perhaps you've heard her name.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, this is Crystal. I don't hear anything either.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Well,
he disappeared. But I think we're all still
okay.
here.
Okay, I want to make sure my phone didn't mess it up. Okay, I'll shoot a note to Carrie. We're dead here. Let's see.
I'm going to call in the phone version and see if I can get their attention.
Okay.
Does everyone have the number to call in? We could call in.
Travis, can you hear us?
Now, yes. We lost you for a while. This is Jill.
Travis, can you hear us? Oh, you know what? I dialed the phone number, but it looks like the phone number goes to the web meeting. So it looks like we're totally outside.
Well, we were in for a while at the beginning there.
Yeah, this is weird.
That's kind of odd.
I figured the dial-up.
Does anyone have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I figured the dial-up on a landline would put us directly in, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, I can't get the
I'll text
go to meeting to
Carrie.
work.
I'll text
Yeah,
Carrie.
thank you. Yeah, because I just emailed her. I don't have her cell phone.
Hang up this phone. It doesn't do any good.
Yeah, this is Chris. I'm texting Carrie.
Thank you. Okay.
There you go. Hello, can everyone hear us? Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Can hear you now.
You're back. Yeah, we lost you for a while.
Where did you lose us? Like around the dog named Jack, or was it before that?
Right at the very
It was
beginning.
right when you were kicking it off.
Right, when
Oh,
you were
really?
kicking off. Okay.
Oh,
She
okay.
said some very nice things.
I did. I said all sorts of nice stuff, blah, 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 blah. So we'll get on with it. But so I was explaining that I tried to put myself in your shoes as volunteers who serve on boards and give of your time outside of your day jobs, and unless you're retired like Travis. But and it makes me think about how it can be rather anxiety-filled, the idea of fundraising and asking your friends for money. So I think the purpose of this conversation today is really to kind of take some of that away. And I think it's very natural that people might feel this way about fundraising, but I want to redirect your attention to how it might make you feel when you give money and when you're part of something that means something to you. So just sort of shift those thoughts in that other direction as we kind of get going on this. And I want to talk from my perspective about what I need as a professional fundraiser at Colorado Public Radio or the MS Society or the Alzheimer's Association, whatever organization I'm with. What I need from my board is, number one, for my board members to give. I need them to give because I want them to know how it feels. I want them to give because the organization means enough to them that it means they are stretching themselves and they want to give because it's important to them and their families, and they've thought that through carefully. That feeling not, that feeling is shared then with other people that you may build relationships with. And so don't forget about how that makes you feel as a board member. So it's sort of the number one thing I'm looking for from a board. Secondly, I'm asking board members to learn what they can about fundraising. Think about it. Don't just dismiss it. And I brought a book with me today that I think every organization should probably have for all of their board members. And I refer to this book a lot. It's called Asking. It's written by a fellow named Gerald Panis. He's probably in his 80s or 90s now. And this is called asking the 59-minute guide to everything board members, volunteers, and staff must know to secure the gift. So if you lose the gift part of that, this is actually quite a bit about relationship building. And I just wanted to read a couple of the titles of some of the chapters. Chapter 5 is called Enthusiasm is Contagious, Start an Epidemic. It's easier to get the gift than the visit. Let's see. Yeah, so that's why we need our volunteers. No one ever listened himself out of a gift. And it's amazing what you don't raise when you don't ask. So this book is really an incredible resource. It will literally take you 59 minutes to read it, and I would encourage all of you to go out and find it. It's a really valuable resource, and I'm sure Carrie can find it for you. So I really think that, you know, the whole idea of fundraising, it's really not rocket science. For me, it's a lot about relationship building. So we need our board members to be out there and talking about the organization that they're involved with and why they're involved. So the third thing I would say is so important to me is for you, is for my board members to be ambassadors. How are they talking about this organization? How are they saying, I love CPR and here's why? And what are the ways in which you share with people that the MS Society is important to you when you're talking to your neighbor? So I need our board members to be ambassadors. I need people to be wearing the organization on their sleeve, literally, and I'm very impressed today because I'm looking around the room and I see an MS Society pin on Michael, an MS Society on Rick. There's just a bunch of overachievers in the room, and Travis has his shirt, and Karen has her pin.
Nice.
So, and I wore mine in honor of, you know, NPR and CPR. And I think that's exactly what we need our board members to be doing, is wearing it on their sleeve and talking about it, whether it's T-shirts, Facebook, whether you're talking about it at dinner parties. I don't care where you do it, just talk it up. So I think in addition to the elevator pitch, in a sense, I think if you can dig into answering the question, why do you do what you do? You will, I think, find answers to this question that might be very meaningful to you. And I bring up why do you do what you do because I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but this was an art exhibit at Burning Man, like in 2004. And there was an artist who put this up on a board and said, why do you do what you do? And then he took pictures of people with pieces of paper explaining why they do what they do. And it was very powerful. And you can go look online at the initials for that, W-Y-D, whatever. But it's there, and it's an incredible story, and I think it really sparked some people's digging into why they do what they do, and I think that kind of thing becomes contagious. So I need board members to share their story. I need them to open doors for me, share why it's important to be on the board, and then ultimately I really need my board to make goals around those things. I need them to think about what is it that I can do that I can make as tangible goals for myself to help the MS Society this month. And my goal is to reach out to 2 people this month by phone and let, you know, friends, family, you name it. Shameless over here is going to have more to add to that, I'm sure. But I need outreach numbers, introductions, people you might discuss with Carrie or with the staff here at the MS Society, and maybe even making some visits alongside staff. So I would encourage you all to set some goals. I know we are going to get into a little Q&A in a little bit, but I'm going to shift first to kind of debunking some of the fundraising lingo about fundraising and break it down into relationship building. And while I'm talking about this, I hope you'll think about maybe in the example of some new neighbor moving into your neighborhood and what you might do to build a relationship with that person. So, fundraising I think is very similar. You might show up at their doorstep with your pound cake and say, I baked this for you, and welcome to the neighborhood. And I wanted to introduce myself to you and wanted to know more about you and your family and what's important to you. Now, obviously, these things take time, and that's an introduction from the very start, but that's the kind of introduction that Carrie needs and the staff here needs, and the courtship and the conversation could be moved from there with a variety of people to help. So you start at the beginning, you build rapport, you find commonalities, you find opportunities to engage, especially if you like each other. You know when the time is right to ask for more, to ask them to a dinner party, to ask them to be on your Muckfest team. So that's just a little about how I look at fundraising is, not thinking about it from as far as asking for a gift. It's really asking for engagement and asking for people to think about what it is that's important to you. And I think that's what makes strong relationships. I think we assume oftentimes that people don't want to be asked, but if we don't ask, we don't know the answer to that question. So let's not do the answering for our friends or connections. It's our job to ask if they have an interest in something you're involved in as well. And this is a very important cause. It's a really important cause, and people need to pause and think about what it is, the kind of commitment you've made, and what that actually means for our society and culture. We all know MS is a very big problem. It affects a lot of people, and I'll just bet you the people that you speak to have some connection somewhere. So it's our job as ambassadors, board members, staff, to connect with people and say this is important and this is why. So that is kind of how I thought we would talk a little bit about this to get started. I think the only thing I don't want to leave out at this point is to make sure that you get support from your staff. Your staff is here to help you find those conversation starters, to help you brainstorm next steps. There are puzzling people out there that you're not quite sure exactly how to connect to. Maybe they're not the low-hanging fruit that you want to talk to, but you need somebody to discuss that with. You've got lots of support staff here at the Society, at this chapter, and they're all very skilled at helping you figure out what a good next step might be. So I'll actually pause there, and there is more that I could talk about, absolutely, but I think I'll pause there and we can think about the questions that might be bouncing around in the ether here.
Well, let me start by asking one general question based on the book that you introduced. And you said that one of the chapter titles was Nobody Ever Listened Themselves Out of a Gift. Could you talk to us a little bit, and I'm going to ask Michael and Rick to also chime in on this, of the importance of listening?
Sure. So actually, I was just here talking to Travis for a few minutes before we got started, and I learned that Travis, in the probably 30 to 45 seconds that we had to talk, well, first of all, Travis likes to tell jokes. They're not all that great. I mean, I'm sorry, but I haven't found a really good one yet. I mean, the sandwich walking into the bar, I kind of got a little giggle out of that, but yeah.
Okay.
But so he was involved in software. He's now retired. He has a dog named Bella. And
Joe loves my dog. We all love your dog.
He lives just north of Wash Park. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2008.
Yeah,
is that right?
good.
And retired in 2010. Rode his bike across the country. So I learned a lot about Travis in a very short period of time, and it actually connected us in a way that I won't forget anytime soon. And I think that's the kind of listening that's required when you want to build a relationship and rapport. And so I think the point of that chapter really is that the author of this book gives the example of walking into a car dealership, and he and his wife walk into the car dealership A, and car dealership A tells them all about this important, all the great features of the Toyota Prius, and they walk away and they go to car dealership B, and car dealership B asks them all about what they're looking for in a car. So you know exactly where they bought their car. So that is what the point of that chapter is.
Rick, you want to talk about listening and the value of listening?
Well, I'm a terrible listener, but I do think that there's listening and then there's what people call active listening, and which is being engaged with the person that you're in a conversation with. And part of it is about opening up about yourself and why you care about something, and getting people to open up about why they care about it, and maybe finding a point of commonality, maybe that they didn't know that this was something they cared about in the past. So I think it's not just being a stump on a log and letting the conversation wash over you. It's actually doing what Carol just did, which is taking down the points of commonality where you can reaffirm that you are listening, and then you can feed that back to the person you're in a conversation with, where they feel they're actually part of the conversation, then they start to open up to you.
All right. Michael, how do you use listening as you build your Muckfest empire?
He's getting bigger and bigger.
I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
I'll work that into the team name somehow. Now, very similar in terms of building relationships. The one big sponsor we had for our team last year started the same way. Went to an after-hours event with Yo and spent the first half of that talking to him about his business and what they were doing, and we're a target client for them, and we did a bunch of that kind of talking, and then it turned to doing things outside of work. And that was my opening to start talking about Muckfest. But it was all built on, and I was able to connect how Muckfest and the event and the team building aspects of it could address some of the challenges he had with running his business. So it was a lot about listening to his business and what he's trying to get done, not me telling him about the MS Society and what we do until the time was right.
I heard an interview the other day with a teacher who had won a Teacher of the Year award. And the interviewer asked the teacher, your kids respect you and like you. How did you do that? She answered, well, you start by respecting and liking them. You reach out to them, you listen to them, you ask about them, what do you need this car for, what are you doing, what's your interests, and so forth, and establish those commonalities. Some of our board members are a little concerned about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, especially at the office or in other organizations like at the church. Should I ask my colleagues, should I ask people who report to me, should I ask my boss, should I ask my preacher or whomever, people that I know in other contexts and other situations. Carol, could you comment on that about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate?
Yeah, so I think I'd have to back up from that question a little bit to kind of address the, what's behind that. And I think that is a concern that out of the gate, people need to ask for money. And so there's this concern that I don't want to ask my pastor because I don't want to just ask for money. So how do you get around that? Well, you start by seeing maybe it's in a corporate environment. Let's use a company environment and somebody that is, sitting down the office from you, and the quid pro quo concerns that come in a company environment. And I think it has to do with, when you see that person in the lunchroom, or you see that person as you're traveling together or whatever it might be, opening the conversation with, did you know that I serve as a board member of the MS Society? And that is where the conversation starts. Or are you involved with any charitable organizations yourself? And why are you involved in those charitable organizations? And the conversation needs to start around that kind of a conversation rather than asking for money. So building that rapport and a mutual understanding, and just building on that. And these things do not happen overnight. And you can ask the Muckfest Empire, Darth Vader over here, and right. So, Darth Vader did not start by, asking people for money out of the gate. So I think that's the step back that I would want to take.
So it's building relationships over time, letting people know what your interests are, sharing your enthusiasm, and as you said earlier, making that enthusiasm contagious.
Mhm.
Michael, you built this huge empire.
I don't like the Darth Vader thing. Sorry, it should be a nicer guy. But
I know, I was going to say, he doesn't have it very often, but he has some other tricks.
Yeah. But you started by building this team through your office, through your company. Tell us about your experience there, and what were the limits that you found, or were there any limits?
I'm shameless junior, I think, so for sure. But there were limits. So when I started the team, I did have a fairly large team reporting to me, and I stayed away from that completely. I didn't even participating in the team, I didn't make any direct asks of anybody that reported to me. I made lots of asks of my friends and my peers who didn't report to me to be on the team. The other thing I did was I took advantage of all the indirect routes I had within the company. So the company has a volunteer program. I just put our team and the event on the list of volunteer opportunities for the company, and I just happened to be the contact for it. There are monitors all over the building that we use to advertise up-and-coming events, and I just advertised MuckFest all over those events. I put flyers in the cafe, lots of things along those lines that were more general communication of, hey, there's this cool event, we've got a team, come join us. So it wasn't the direct boss to employee relationship. I never made that ask. And then they happened to get involved and and some of my best fundraisers on the team were folks that just happened to stumble on that and went, oh, this is really something, and they went off and they would raise a couple $1,000. So it was, but it was never a direct ask for people who reported to me. Thankfully now, my new role, I don't have anybody reporting to me, so I am completely shameless at this point.
You had told me before about putting flyers out and brochures and so forth. Did you ask permission to do that?
No. That was a beg forgiveness later event. Now it's become a norm, but I was the first one to start doing that. And if I had asked to put flyers in the cafe where everybody eats lunch, there would have been forms to fill out, and somebody would have been concerned. And at the time, our company had its own charitable foundation, and they're very sensitive about competing with that. But I just put out the flyers and put the things up on the monitors and advertised and I worked my way into something that made sense for the company. There was an established volunteer program that was part of that charitable foundation, and that was the foot in the door. So then it became a good thing for the company. There was a great volunteer event that could have a lot of folks participating, and at the same time it got the word out about our team and what we were doing. So, and amazingly enough, CEO had lunch in the cafe every day, saw the flyers, and nobody yelled at me.
You said you didn't ask for contributions from people who reported to you. Did you ask for contributions from people you reported, to whom you reported?
To whom I reported?
Your boss.
Boss's
boss. Boss's boss.
I did, although predominantly my first ask was to just be part of the team. Mm-hmm. And then if there were some reason they couldn't participate, then they said, well, there's other ways that you could participate and show your support. So that way I did, but it was always the team first in those situations. In a work environment, I found that to be very easy. And then that's been part of how we've built the empire. Is my first ask is always just come play with us in the mud. And then and then those that don't, then I go to a money ask from there.
Okay. Rick, you want to share your? Oops, sorry.
I just think that you should share about how it's expanded now into the Volunteer Spirit. It's a new company,
yes.
And you have this internal buzz that you created with Danny and other people, and now it's.
Yeah, so it was an informal. Well, it was a volunteer program, and as I said, we had a charitable foundation that was part of the company. We've recently been acquired, and that charitable foundation has been retired, which opened up possibilities with the new acquiring company And they, to encourage participation, have a thing where they, for every person that volunteers for an event, they'll donate $100 up to 25 people. So it has now opened us up to a place where we have made the MS Society the major theme of all of our volunteer events, and we're working to make sure that there are 25 volunteers at each and every event, so we can get $2,500 for each one. So and I think we'll have 4, if not 5 events, so that means $10,000 that we'll get from a company that doesn't formally have a program to push donations to an organization like this.
Cool. So you're branching out.
We are.
The empire expands.
Yep. Yeah. I know we have walk, we have bike, muck, and hike. All 4 covered as volunteers.
Wow.
Rick, you want to talk about your experiences?
Well, I mean, my favorite investment bank in the world, and I know most people don't have a favorite investment bank, but I actually do, being a lawyer in this industry, used to say that they were long-term greedy. They developed relationships with clients, and they didn't try to get all the money out of the client on the first go-around. It was meant to be a lifetime relationship with that firm, and the relationship would go through successive generations. And on another board I serve on, I started off the same way, and I'm doing it in my new role here with the MS Society, which is, first, I always remember good comedy starts with building to the joke. You don't go to the punchline. So you have to get people to understand that this is something you're passionate about. So that's what I'm doing in my new job, and then in the other board, I'm on that a couple years ago. And then as people knew it was something I was passionate about and explained to them why I was passionate, I started saying, oh, well, there's any number of ways you can help me, and you can help this organization. If you're my good colleague, and it starts creating a buzz. Again, people know that you're interested, and people know that other people are interested. Maybe you find people that have similar commitment to the organization. And next thing you know, you start getting people involved, and it doesn't have to be cash. I mean, I think that's one thing people have to understand. In my former law firm, I went and said, I'm on the diversity committee. Well, the most diverse school district in the state of Colorado has a need, and our former colleague is the superintendent. He needs help. Maybe we should help. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. How should we help? Well, maybe we could do all their work pro bono for the foundation. Next thing you know, we've committed, at that point, we had committed about $40,000 of pro bono. That saved the foundation having to go out and hire a lawyer to do these things. So it doesn't have to be the ask for cash. It can be giving time. It can be giving resources. It can be getting your organization involved. And then when I say about the long-term greedy or building to the joke, part of it also is giving people the teaser. You don't have to go in and tell them that, hey, I just joined the MS Society, I want $10,000. It's, hey, I just joined the MS Society, this is why it's important to me. My grandmother had progressive degenerative MS. My mother had to take care of her throughout college. It was a lot of work to ask for a teenage girl to do that. That's why I care. And leave it at that. And then come back and say, hey, now I'm working on this. We've got Muckfest. We've got 4 different ways to get involved. Can we get you involved? And then the other thing, I'm a big fan of game theory, what some people call mail-in security, which is that you play on the competitiveness of organizations, be they law firms, accounting firms, businesses, and you tell them, yeah, our 4 competitors support this organization. We don't. Do we want to be embarrassed? How about we step up and we start trying to get involved and show that we're better than our competitors? They may not care about the cause, but they sure as heck want to look better than their competitors. So I think there are creative ways to think about tapping into your organization on any number of levels, whether people have their own connection to the MS Society and to multiple sclerosis, or whether they care about you because you're their friend or their colleague, or maybe they're just completely shallow people that are competitive. It's not one size fits all to fundraising. And I think we can focus on trying to tap into those different ways to get people engaged.
Carol, do you use competition in your work?
Always.
Yeah? Tell us a little bit about that. That's an interesting angle I hadn't thought of before.
Well, I just want to say I think you all are so fortunate that you have this kind of advocacy going on here, right here in your boardroom.
Wow.
And I think that speaks so highly of what the passion that you've actually can tap into here, and that this is going to be quite contagious. You know, the competitive side, I'm a major gifts officer. So I work much more on the one-to-one relationships, on the, you know, gifts of $10,000 and up, pretty much one-time gifts. And so often the world of competition is not necessarily as part of that conversation. It's a little bit part of it when you come to the conversation about recognition. Okay. And there are a lot of people that want their plaque on the wall with their name. And so that is the kind of thing that we will, by all means, have a conversation about. People want varying levels of both anonymity and recognition. So any conversation I'm having about a gift has that element. So that's the piece of it that I think philanthropists can get into is you can get to a point in a conversation with people where they're saying, I want to be giving at that level because I want all the things associated with giving a six-figure gift. Because that's the kind of person I am, that's our family, and we're going to give you $250,000 because those are the things that are meaningful to me. So that's where the competitive side comes from, the individual giving.
So if the Smith family says they're going to give $250,000, do you go to the Jones family and say, hey, fuck up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, so I think especially as it relates to campaigns and when people are really trying to, you know, get to a certain level and you have your giving pyramid and you're trying to figure out, you know, you need 10 people to make gifts of $100,000 and you need, you know, 2 people to give it, you know, $1 million, you know, however that giving pyramid works out, that kind of competition is very healthy and works very well.
Great.
Let me just, wouldn't you also
Carrie?
Thank you. That many times in asking a donor, an existing donor, who else should I talk to? So that is a big, you know, opportunity as well as, so thank you to my best investment firm. Is there anybody else that you think I should talk to? And that sometimes is part of that, you know, it's either competition or it's also that networking. Yeah, there's another just strategy sometimes of, you know, you may ask your, you know, one of your companies, and then you may say, hey, who else do you think we ought to talk to? And the network just gets bigger and bigger.
Right. So a little competition, a little referencing, who else should I talk to, and so forth. I have plenty of other questions. I'm wondering if anybody on the line has a question they'd like to put in now.
I think they can talk. Yeah, there's Whit. Yeah, Whit.
Hello for the cloud. Hello for the cloud.
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Whit.
Hey guys, it's Whit.
Hey, Whit.
So, quick question for Carol. I'm a big NPR, CPR fan, and I noticed that you guys do like a guerrilla fundraiser where, I don't know, you do it once a quarter, how often you do it, but you dedicate, like, I think it's like a whole week of airtime to just constant, like, blitzing of the market and asking and doing a phone-a-thon kind of thing. So I'm just curious, in your book or statistically, have you guys found that works better, or what's your advice as far as asking over time versus asking in a blitz fashion like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that's it probably makes my job a little more difficult as the relationship building approach that I take in fundraising. Is that approach is it's very transactional, right? You're listening day after day and you're hearing the same appeal. The problem is that it works. And so we have to do it. And you know, it's kind of like, it's like direct mail, right? It really raises awareness, and it is really speaking to the donor that is the you know, maybe $100 a year, or you know, $50 a month for a year, or, you know, it's geared towards roping in those kinds of people, and those are the people that are listening. And so we need them to be supporting us. So it's that kind of membership in Colorado Public Radio model. It's an absolutely necessary evil. But, you know, more what I'm doing is sort of taking the the people that we that do give to us, and then looking at those people more carefully under a microscope to say, who is it that may have the capacity to do a little bit more here, and how do I get a conversation going with them? So I'm not sure if that really answers your question too, so well. It's sort of a tough call, but it has to be done.
It's the highest form of Jewish guilt I've ever seen.
And you would know.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel terrible if I haven't written my check. Okay, time to whip out the credit card. Or if you're watching NPR Downton Abbey, on public radio, on public television, you haven't donated, you feel like a heel. So, I mean, I do think it works. But I do think also, I would be curious, Carol, if you think sometimes people, because I know if I've written the check that year and it's the beginning of the donation week, I change the channel.
Yep.
And
that's what we're hoping you'll do, frankly. I mean, I think that's what I'm hoping you're going to do. Because I'll have a conversation with you later.
There's no one right approach, and CPR and PR actually has an audience, and if they didn't take advantage of that opportunity, you'd be silly, so it isn't just one answer for every organization.
Right.
Find your niche.
And it's very interesting because if you look at the majority of those donors, they do not look very pretty on paper. Right? They are the people who are actually, they know they listen to you, they don't have a lot of money. They're the ones that are actually giving you more as a percentage of their income than some of the others that I deal with in the wealthier echelon. So it's a very important demographic.
But you're unapologetic about it. And I think that's one thing we have to be cognizant of is if it's your story that you're telling, which is, this is why I care about this organization and this cause. And you don't start with the joke. You don't start with the ask. You start with why I care and why you should maybe care.
Yeah.
Then it becomes easier. And I think public radio is very good at that, and public television is very good, which is they get you on the hook. You care before they ask. And then when they make the ask at that point feels like the Jewish guilt, which is, wow, I really should have donated 6 months ago, and I feel like a heel. So I think that's one thing we can do as an organization is try to get people emotionally connected with our organization before we make the ask.
And was there more to that question, or did we answer that for you?
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to figure out how to improve my personal fundraising efforts. And I think it's an interesting concept, and I've thought about it reflecting on what CPR does, that instead of sending out an email and waiting, for replies and next month sending out another email, maybe posting some stuff on Facebook. I thought about maybe my personal fundraising efforts would be better if I took an entire week and just, blitzed my donors and blitzed every contact I have on LinkedIn and Facebook several times in hopes to get a better hit rate.
Yeah, and I think I would encourage you to be persistent and patient.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah. I think there was another voice on the phone, and perhaps another question.
Yeah. Hey, this is Brooke Allen. I'm a physician up in Basalt, and Carrie knows my concerns about approaching patients. But one thought that I had this year was to do a bit of a blitz through Facebook and LinkedIn, just sharing what the society is doing for patients and asking them to join our walk team and potentially donate if they couldn't join the walk team. And I just wondered if you had any experience with physicians and patient relationships and whether that has ever been harmful. Obviously, they're not giving to me personally, they're giving to the society, but I just wondered your thoughts there.
I'm going to turn this over to Michael because honestly, I really don't have a lot of experience there. I think you've got probably an ethical boundary you've got to think about, but I'll give it up.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you bring that up, Brooke, because as a patient, so it's my physical therapist, and there's a couple aspects to this story, but and it gets back to the long-term greed with the relationship. So unfortunately, my wife and I have had many reasons to go visit this particular physical therapist over the years, and But last year I got an email from him about a 5K that he was feeling really was very important for him, and he was inviting. And I would say it probably has to do with how you make the ask, right? His ask that he blasted out was to just participate in this 5K that was important to him, and he explained why it was important to him and meaningful. So I didn't feel like he was crossing any sort of boundaries. It was just, oh, this is something that Joe is passionate about, and he just wants me to participate. And he happened to know I run a little bit, and he worked some of that into the message. So I think as long as it's along those lines, it doesn't cross that patient boundary. The long-term greed aspect of it, though, became at the same time I was sharing with him the things I was doing with MuckFest and my mom and everything that was going on there, and I unfortunately hurt my back again, so I was back visiting him recently, and so I asked him. I remembered this 5K. I said, hey, how'd that 5K turn out? And he said, oh, it's great. We're going to do it again. I said, well, I hope I can participate this year. I'm not, I'm not injured. And he said, but you were involved in something too, weren't you? Yes, I was. And so we talked all about it again, and I said, it'd be a good thing. And long story short, he ended up saying, look, I'll sponsor your team, but I also want to start my own team for MuckFest, because I think it'd be a good thing for the staff to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it became all about the relationship. It was nothing, at least for me as a patient of his, that I felt he was ever crossing a line, and because he didn't straight up ask me for money. He asked me to participate in this 5K that was important to him, and it ultimately turned into a really good thing for my team as well as MuckFest as an event.
But that goes to the point that we started with. If you're wearing a pin, if you're wearing a jacket, if people see you wearing it, if you get in the habit of doing it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going somewhere, just put it on. Then people remember that about you, and then people say, oh, I have somebody that I know that is dealing with MS, or their family's dealing with MS, and it becomes easy to have that conversation. And when you ask them to get involved and you don't ask for cash, I mean, like today, Carrie's been hounding me quite happily. I sent out an email to my entire law firm and all of our staff saying, here's what the society is doing. I'm a member of the society board. Why I'd love to have your support in any of these things. Tell me what you'd be excited to do, whether it's MuckFest or the walk or the bike, and tell me. And getting people engaged on the level that they're comfortable rather than saddling them with some level of engagement that they may not be comfortable with.
Let me ask a broad question here. We talked about the importance of listening, but at some point we need to talk. We need to say something about our society. Carol, you used to work here and you've got 20 years of experience. What would you say we should say about our society? What are the key things that might help us build a relationship, create some empathy?
Let's see. I don't know if I can do it for the society anymore as well as I might like to. I'm just formulating, I've been at Colorado Public Radio now for 3 months, so I'm putting together, my elevator speech, and I'm in kind of the early phases of this, so this could be a good chance to, try it out. But, I try to work on, what is CPR and why do I do what I do? And so when I'm speaking to people about my work and I get a chance to share a little bit, my role, I've just got a new position at Colorado Public Radio. I'm now the Director of Leadership Gifts. And I don't know if you know Colorado Public Radio, but we serve as a news and music delivery on the radio for classical music, in-depth, unbiased news and information, and a open air station, which is new music and Colorado bands. So I just started my role there. We have 475,000 listeners, of which about 10% support our work, and my role in Leadership Gifts is to work with families and family foundations on giving gifts of $10,000 or more.
Rick, when you talk about the society, what do you say?
Well, I always try to remember that when I'm talking to people, it's who am I, why am I here, what do I want, and why you should give it to me, and whether it's in the short term or the long term. So when I tell people, I tell them the personal story, why MS matters to me, both my grandmother and then family friends that have it. I tell them about the work that the MS Society does nationally and the MS Society does in Colorado, supporting people that have MS, but then also, importantly, supporting the families of people that are the caregivers and that have to support people with MS. And then I talk to them about what they could do to maybe help. You know, what are the great things that we are doing and why it matters. And then I try to tap into what they may be interested in. You know, and some people may say, yeah, that muck, I mean, I can tell you, a lot of people think muck sounds great. Why? It skews younger, it's competitive, it's fun, you get to roll around in the mud like a kid.
That's how you hurt your back.
Yeah.
No, all my injured backs were from running, not from up.
But I think tying it full circle, that's part of the active listening, which is trying through the conversation to figure out, it's almost like fishing, what will get the fish on the beach. If people sound like they're really outdoorsy and exciting and competitive, then I may talk more about muck. If there's somebody who just wants to do something low-key and maybe they have a physical disability, then maybe a short part of walk. If there's somebody that says, oh yeah, I do a lot of biking every weekend, I'm going to talk to them about bike.
So will you do your elevator speech? Will you tell us?
Oh,
What do you say? You're at a cocktail party. Yeah. Hi. So you're involved in the MS Society. What do you do there?
I tell them.
What is
I'm a member of the board of directors of the MS Society of Colorado and Wyoming. I'm involved because my grandmother had progressive degenerative MS, which meant that she suffered a continuous decline of her health over a number of years. And my mother took care of her while a teenager. And my mom showed incredible strength and courage in doing that at a time when there was no treatment. I'm part of the MS Society now because we are working on treatment for people that have the condition, and we are working on programs to help find cures to it, and also to support the families of people that have the condition. And we have a number of ways that people can get involved. And these are a couple. And then I walk through this.
He's good.
He's good.
He's got it.
Good. Michael?
I'll say mine is not nearly that good. For me personally, I come at it from a participation angle. And I probably get more interest because I say Muckfest. And that just has such a quirky name that nobody knows about. If I say Bike MS, oh, MS 150s, right? They know it through the multiple names. That I get more of the conversation going around through that. And then they'll ask, well, why are you doing it? And then I talk about my mom and the things that I go through with that, and the things that I picked up through being on the board, even my board participation. You know, I attribute that all back to Muckfest, and people are like, oh wow, that's pretty amazing. But I tend to still always come at it from a participation angle. It's just, again, like I said, I think the event lends itself to that. It's such a fun event. You can have such a good time. It's a team, if it's a corporate environment, I talk about team building. If it's just a person who's outdoorsy, I just talk about, mess around, flopping around in the mud. If it's a tough mudder person, I say, oh, here's another great event. It's just like that one, but this one is for a good cause, right? And I tend to go at that. I don't have I don't come at it straight from the society perspective.
Okay, so you use the event to open the conversation. Okay. I'm aware of the time. We just have a few minutes left, so I think maybe it's time for closing comments, and we'll start with Rick Levine.
Well, I mean, when I was interviewing to join the MS Society, I told the story that I was described as shameless by my friend who's the superintendent of the Aurora Public School District. When I was at my previous law firm, I got my law firm engaged. We became pro bono counsel. We bought tables and did a lot of things. And the next year, a couple years after I left, or the first year after I left, I sent an email to the managing partner of the firm, and I said, Good Jewish Guild, this is an organization that we supported while I was there. Our former colleague is still the superintendent. The need is still there. I hope that he and I can still count on your support at this level. I didn't say at any level. I said at this level. And my friend, the superintendent, sent an email back to me, and it just said, shameless. And I thought it was pretty funny. I called him up. I said, do you want me not to ask? And he says, no, keep doing it. We need you to raise money. And that I told Travis and And we talked about it, and Carrie about it, and I said, yeah, I do try to be a bit shameless, but I think you also have to be sensitive to what fits your personality. And not everybody can do that. And some people may want to talk about the activities and then talk about the cause. I think you have to figure out, I had a trial lawyer coach in law school who said you have to figure out your shtick. It's like good comedy. What's your shtick? Everybody can't do it the same way. You have to figure out what works for you, get comfortable with it, try it out, fine-tune it over time. So I would encourage you to be brave and to try new things out, and then over time you'll figure out what works for you and what story you can tell on behalf of the society that will help us raise money.
Michael, what are your closing thoughts?
I would say almost same type of thing. You know, it's bottom line is be genuine. You have to be true to yourself. If I go into a situation thinking that I want to ask somebody for X amount of dollars, I get hung up on that as opposed to, you know, really finding out about them, engaging with them, and being just naturally excited about what I do in the Muck Fest events. And that tends to just open up the doors. If I'm just genuine about that, and I don't have to fake it, because I love the event, I love everything we do with it, everybody walks within a mile of me knows that I'm involved with it. And I don't have to fake a, you know, well, I'm going to try and make an ask or a formal thing. And it's amazing the things that happen as a result of that. If people offer up, oh, I know a catering person who could do X, Y, and Z. Oh, and it was a friend of mine who put up the CEO right in front of me, you know, said, well, you should sponsor these guys for $1,000, shouldn't you? Right? And I just sat there and said yes. and you go through it. So I think if you're genuine to it, naturally good things come from that.
Okay.
I'll make
Carol?
the assumption I'm up next.
I think you're up next. You've got a lot of experience at this. What would you like to share with us?
Well, I just think that you all, the board is in this unique position to bring their network to the party, and that we, all of us, I know I speak on behalf of all of the staff when I say how grateful they are for the work that you're doing to do that. But to do that, I would challenge you to also speak of this at every board meeting and to make some goals for yourself, and to hold yourselves accountable to those goals, and use your staff to help you put that together and to support one another, because you're really important to us staff people as board members. So that's the best conclusion I can make. I just, you know, boards are really important, and I can't, you may think that you're a novice at this, and you may be, but you just bring a network that is really invaluable.
Bring a network and enthusiasm.
Oh yes, the contagious
enthusiasm. We have time perhaps for one more question from the phone. Does anyone have a question there? Hearing no questions, I think we'll call the question. Is that what and thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. This has been recorded, and it will be on the air, on the web very shortly.
And we'll send out a survey.
Oh, and we'll send out a survey for what you liked about this and what you would like to do next. This is our third educational session, and we'd like to have a number more, just depending on your wishes. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.